In the late 1500s, the English government began one of the largest land grabs in history. Common land that villages had shared for centuries, land where ordinary families grew food, grazed animals, and collected firewood, was fenced off and handed to private landowners, hundreds of thousands of acres taken, and the compensation for the poor, a tiny strip of dirt, literally, small plots of land allotted to tenant cottages so they could still grow enough food to survive. That is where the word allotment comes from, and it is the direct ancestor of the raised bed, sitting in your backyard right now. But here is what fascinates me. Between 1845 and 1869, over 600,000 acres of common land were enclosed across England, and of that, only 2,200 acres, less than 1%, were set aside for the people who actually needed it. The rest went to landowners. The fight for ordinary people to access growing space is not a modern convenience story. It is a 200-year struggle, an understanding that history changes how you think about the 4x4 cedar frame in your garden. Now, those early allotments were not fancy. A standard plot was 10 rods, which is an old English measurement that has technically been illegal for trade since 1965, but is still used on allotment sites to this day. 10 rods works out to about 2,700 square feet, roughly the size of a doubles tennis court. And on that space, a family was expected to grow a meaningful portion of their annual food. The system grew slowly through the 1800s, pushed along by legislation that forced reluctant local councils to provide plots when people demanded them. And it was not just a British phenomenon. In Germany, industrialization created the same crisis. Workers flooding into cities with no land and no food. By 1919, Germany had passed its own allotment legislation. And today, the country still has roughly 1.4 million allotment gardens, covering nearly 500 square kilometers. That is an area larger than some German cities. But it was not until the world went to war that citizen gardening truly exploded. When World War I broke out in 1914, the British government passed the Defense of the Realm Act, which gave local authorities the power to seize land for food production. Disused railway lines, public parks, even cricket pitches were dug up and planted. By 1918, there were an estimated 1.5 million allotment plots across the UK, with 7,000 new applications coming in every single week. But America's story is even bigger. During World War II, the USDA launched the Victory Garden program, and the response was extraordinary. By 1943, an estimated 20 million Victory Gardens had sprung up across the country. Backyards, vacant lots, apartment rooftops, schoolyards. There was even a Victory Garden growing inside a baseball stadium in Florida. Eleanor Roosevelt planted one on the White House lawn, which actually annoyed the Department of Agriculture. And by 1944, those 20 million gardens were producing roughly 40% of all fresh vegetables consumed in the United States. 20 million families growing nearly half the country's vegetables. Think about that for a second. Tomatoes were the most popular crop, followed by beans, onions, lettuce, radishes, beets, and carrots. 2/3 of those gardens were not on farms. They were in towns, cities, and suburban neighborhoods. Ordinary people, many of them first-time gardeners, feeding themselves and their communities from small, defined growing spaces. And this is the part that always gets me. Americans bought 315,000 pressure cookers in 1943, up from just 66,000 the year before. The act of growing food created an entire preservation ecosystem around it, People were not just gardening, they were canning, drying, pickling, and storing. The whole food cycle came alive. But then the wars ended, and something tragic happened. Despite the fact that food rationing continued for years after the war, councils across Britain began reclaiming allotment land almost immediately. Housing needed to be built. Roads needed to go somewhere. And allotments, which had literally fed the nation, were treated as temporary inconveniences. In London, parkland used for growing was withdrawn at the end of the 1919 season. Before the returning soldiers had even settled home, the decline continued for decades. Suburbs expanded. Supermarkets made cheap imported produce available year-round. The hard-won knowledge of growing your own food started to feel unnecessary. A University of Sheffield study found that urban allotment space in the UK fell by 65% between 1960 and 2016, and the researchers calculated that the lost land could have produced an average of 2,500 tons of food per year in each city. The most deprived areas lost the most space. The people who needed growing land the most had it taken away first, again. There was a brief spark of revival in the 1970s when the BBC sitcom The Good Life, about a suburban couple trying to become self-sufficient, captured the public imagination. Interest ticked up. But it was not enough to reverse decades of land loss. However, the knowledge itself did not die, because while allotment plots were being paved over, a handful of people were quietly refining the core principles that made allotments work and adapting them for smaller spaces. In the 1960s, an English horticulturist named Alan Chadwick brought something called the French intensive method to California. The technique involved deeply cultivating soil in raised, defined beds, a method with roots in French market gardening and Chinese intensive agriculture going back centuries. Chadwick called them deep beds. The idea was simple. If you loosen the soil deeply instead of just scratching the surface, roots grow down instead of sideways. And that means you can pack plants much closer together. John Seymour, widely considered the father of the self-sufficiency movement, picked this up and ran with it. His 1978 book, The Self-Sufficient Gardener, promoted the deep bed method as the key to growing more food in less space. His subtitle said it all: Using the New Deep Bed Method to Grow More Food in Less Space. He claimed a single 100 square foot deep bed could provide enough vegetables for one person for a whole year. Even if that estimate is generous, the principle held. Intensive cultivation in a defined space produces dramatically more than spreading plants across rows. But the person who truly brought defined space gardening to the masses was a retired civil engineer from New Jersey named Mel Bartholomew. In 1975, Bartholomew joined his local community garden as a hobby, and he was immediately frustrated. Row gardening wasted enormous amounts of space. When he asked fellow gardeners why they planted in rows, the answer was always the same: because that is the way we have always done it. Bartholomew saw a design problem, not a gardening problem. He realized row gardening was just a hand-me-down technique from farming, designed for tractors and mechanized harvesting. It made no sense in a backyard. So in 1976, he invented square-foot gardening, built around a raised, open-bottom bed with a lumber frame, 4 feet by 4 feet, divided into a grid of 1-foot squares. His book, published in 1981, sold over 2.5 million copies. He hosted a PBS television show for 6 years. The state of Louisiana adopted his method as the official garden practice taught in schools. And here is what connects all of this: Bartholomew's raised bed, Seymour's deep bed, Chadwick's French intensive method, and the original allotment plot are all answers to the same fundamental problem. People with limited space need a defined growing area where they can control the soil, plant intensively, and produce the maximum amount of food. The techniques transferred almost perfectly. Succession planting, companion planting, crop rotation, compost as the primary soil input, and the golden rule that you never, ever walk on the growing surface. All of these practices were standard on allotments long before anyone built a 4x4 frame. Now, I want to show you something about the science, because this is the part that genuinely blew my mind. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. We break down the science behind gardening every week so you can grow more food with less guesswork. A research team from the University of Leicester compared soil from urban allotment gardens to soil from the surrounding agricultural region, and the results were striking. Allotment soils had 32% higher concentrations of soil organic carbon compared to nearby pastures and arable fields. They had 36% higher carbon to nitrogen ratios, 25% more total nitrogen, and 10% lower bulk density, which means less compaction. Think of it like this: soil is a bank account. Every time you add compost, you are making a deposit. Every time you grow a crop, you are making a withdrawal. Industrial farms have been making withdrawals with heavy machinery for decades, compacting the soil and burning through organic matter. But allotment gardeners do the opposite. They add compost by hand. They dig without machines. They never drive a tractor across the growing surface. And after decades of that kind of care, the soil is measurably richer, looser, and more alive than the farmland surrounding it. And here is the connection to your raised bed. The exact same principles apply. When you build a raised bed and fill it with quality compost, you are starting with rich soil from day one. When you never step inside the bed frame, you are preventing the compaction that industrial agriculture causes. When you add compost every season, you are building organic carbon the same way allotment gardeners have done for over a century. Your raised bed is a concentrated version of everything that makes allotment soil exceptional. The practical difference is real. Intensive planting methods in defined beds consistently produce 2 to 4 times more food per square foot than traditional row gardens. You control the drainage because the bed is elevated. You control the soil quality because you built it. You eliminate compaction because the 4-foot width means you can reach the center from either side without ever stepping in. Every one of these advantages traces back to the same insight that allotment gardeners discovered generations ago. Define your space, build your soil, and let the biology do the work. And that brings us to today. Over 100,000 people in the UK are currently on waiting lists for allotment plots. The average wait is nearly 4 years. In London, it can stretch to 12. 1 in 8 British households has no garden at all. In the United States, the COVID pandemic created 18 million new gardeners, most of them millennials growing food for the first time. The raised bed market has grown from roughly $440 million globally in 2020 to nearly $500 million in 2025, with household adoption rising from 24% to 38% in just 4 years. The problem that created allotments in 1845 has not gone away. People still need access to growing space. The solution just got smaller. A 4x4 raised bed on a patio is the modern micro-allotment. A community garden plot in Brooklyn is the modern equivalent of a Victorian allotment site in Nottingham. The containers on your balcony are the smallest possible version of the same ancient principle. So the next time you look at your raised bed, see it for what it really is. Not just a box of soil. It is the latest chapter in a 200-year story about ordinary people claiming their right to grow food. From enclosed commons to wartime victory gardens to your backyard, the thread has never broken. So now you understand the history, the science, and the direct line connecting your raised bed to a movement that once fed entire nations. Next week, we are breaking down exactly how to build the kind of soil that allotment gardeners spent decades perfecting, but in your first season. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And if you want to go deeper on the science of raised bed soil, that video is on screen right now.